Hello, everyone. This is Armstrong Williams on the right side. Don't curse, speak English. Virtuous society. I dare you to listen. Hey, turn it up. Hey. Get on the right side. Elevate your mind. I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side.
Yo, man, it's your boy K.O. And you're tuned into the most conservative of our brothers.
The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Thank you so much for joining us. And obviously, we have other special guests joining us. You know, one of the things that we don't do often enough is talk about the financial markets and the wonderful things that are happening in the financial markets. And even now, as we're into this holiday season, still with all of our financial upheavals and economic challenges, and the fact that the economy has lost jobs and people sort of have diminished in many ways, you know, there is no harm in cutting back on the cable TV so you can spend quality time with your family members and friends. I mean, and even if you can't afford the gas at the pump, there's nothing wrong with grouping together with families and others to carpool in together. I mean, it certainly enhances relationships. I mean, Americans are such a resilient people, and we want to talk about America, the economy, the financial markets. And so, you know, C. Payne Lucas is in our studio. C. Payne, when you think about the American engine and the American economy, no matter how bleak things are now, we have always have been able to recover.
Absolutely. We are a strong people. And, you know, when you hear both sides of issues from the Republicans and Democrats, one thing that you do hear is a sense of hope, because I never hear a fatalistic point of view, regardless of who is sharing. I think one of the things that is evident from this country having survived the Depression is that we are a country that comes back even stronger. And so I'm often reminded of the infrastructure in this country, which is struggling to kind of keep pace with China. It is a reminder that at some point, just as those roads and bridges were built after the Great Depression, we are certainly going to get back to rebuilding the infrastructure in this country. And I think that's going to be a huge source of jobs and an economic upturn with this country when we get there.
Let me welcome our guest to the show. How are you today?
How are you, Armstrong?
Milo, it's always a pleasure. One of the things that we don't do enough of is talk about this American engine. I was just listening to C. Payne Lucas. You know, we're in the holiday season. Obviously, people are thinking about family and giving and the things that we're blessed for. You know, everybody knows the economy is bad, but what are the things that America has going for her that we don't talk enough about, Milo?
America has diversity. America has fortitude. And most of all, to a great extent, we still retain a tremendous and disproportionate commitment to excellence, unparalleled anywhere else on the planet.
Jordan Goodman, how are you?
Great to be with you, Armstrong.
You know what? We're celebrating free enterprise, and what I want these distinguished gentlemen to do, all our financial success stories in their world, is that we did build this and talk about the engines that started with maybe before that, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Mellons, the J.P. Morgan. We can go back and talk about how this economy and the engine was built like any other place in the world, and how it continues to sustain itself today. What we're doing today is celebrating capitalism and free enterprise. We're going to start with you, Milo.
Well, you know, I think you touched on some of the best names in American history for free enterprise. I don't always support the methodology that they deployed, but I have always championed their initiative and their wherewithal for identifying new pathways to achieve their goals. You know, as a nation, we enjoy probably one of the most diversified and tolerant communities of any nation on the world. And that diversity and our tolerance for each other's unique nuances has always been a catalyst to American growth and enterprise development. I'm privileged when I look at my organization here in Atlanta, and I see the colors that are represented in our organization and the nuances. We have every facet of talented person, men, women, race, even transgender, and in each and every case there is something that each individual brings to the table that uniquely qualifies them to contribute to the success of the enterprise. And I can't think of a country, anywhere in the planet that can mirror us in that respect.
Jordan?
Well, I agree. I mean, we have been the greatest economic engine the world has ever known because of the free enterprise system. Now, the people you mentioned found a niche and dominated that niche, whether it was railroads or oil or banking or whatever it may be, and they became so dominant in those niches that we created the antitrust laws and the income tax because they thought they were too powerful, the trust busters and all that. Today, companies come along like a Google, which didn't exist 10 years ago and is very dominant in offering really good services and being very smart about the way they do things. Facebook, other companies like that, these tend to be done on the internet today as opposed to brick and mortar kinds of building railroads and drilling for oil, that kind of thing. But I think it's less dynamic now than it was in the past in many ways because of all the amount of government imposition and regulation and taxes, and so it's just much harder today to create a big success like that than I think it was in the past. Just because of all you think of the amount of federal government there was in 1910 compared to 2010, just exponentially more government regulations and so on than we had then. So it just makes it harder. It's still possible. It makes it harder to be a real free enterprise winner today.
Are you saying that we're stifling the industrial spirit that America once possessed and had ownership of?
So. Yes, I think so. With all the regulations, the taxes. Just think of 100 years ago, Armstrong, okay? If you were in the oil business, you didn't have to deal with the EPA. If you were in the banking business, there was no SEC. There was no FDIC. All the regulatory agencies that we've created. Now, I'm not saying these agencies are bad. There are reasons for all of them. But there's a lot more impediments to forming a new business today than there were back then. So, yes, it's much harder and much more expensive and much more regulatory requirements and much higher taxes.
More liability today.
Remember that when the income tax came in 1913, it was 1%. That was the first income tax rate. Now, it's gone up a little bit since then. It's about to go up even more with what's going on with the fiscal cliff. So it just makes it much harder for businesses to start today. And overall, new business formation is down today from where it was recently because it's so much harder. And the businesses that do form, in many, many cases, fail today because it's just much harder.
I was thinking about the information highway, the superhighway, and how technology has brought a level of tool set to the everyday person that enables them to do things that used to take an army. For example, your CRM platforms are open source. How do you think the internet has played, or what kind of role do you think the internet has played in the development of small business
well, it's
in
leveled
this
the
economy?
playing field. One person company can have a just as impressive looking website as General Electric or some big major company. So it has leveled the playing field and allowed individuals and small companies to flourish in a way that was not possible in the past because of exactly what you say. And in many cases, you can buy the back-end tools for relationships with customers and processing orders and shipping orders, and all the kind of back-end stuff can be outsourced today. And you look at a company like an Amazon, which didn't exist, 20 years ago, was a major, major force in retailing today, not only in books and records, but in all kinds of different things. So that is a major player that didn't exist. 20 years ago, it was Sears and Kmart and Walmart and so on, and now you've got all kinds of online retailers that do extremely, extremely well, and I think that's only going to continue as we're going into the holiday shopping season here. More and more sales every year go online because it's more convenient. They don't have to battle the crowds. They can get good prices. They avoid sales tax. There's all kinds of reasons why people are shopping online, and I think that's going to continue.
Milo, but do you actually think that is a real economy?
What, the online economy?
Yes.
I think it is probably the most critical go-forward economy for our country.
But I'm talking about in terms of creating real sustainable jobs.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, and our business here in Atlanta is predominantly, I'd say we're 70% technology-driven, and of the personnel in my facility, all but 2 play active online roles.
I mean, you look at a company like an Amazon; it's all online. They do not have stores, and that does create lots of jobs. Absolutely.
Well, not to be combative, but while Amazon is online, Amazon has tremendous brick-and-mortar infrastructure.
Well, they ship from warehouses and things. I mean, the shopping experience is all online.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they have physical infrastructure to actually ship all the stuff. Sure.
Well, I make the point, not, as I said, not to be combative, but to illustrate that online business isn't an entire departure from traditional models. What it is a hybrid of the more historical business model, of traditional brick and mortar, with efficiencies, and the online presents an efficiency opportunity. But we still need all the back-end brick-and-mortar infrastructure. So, Armstrong, when you ask, is it a real economy? Absolutely. I mean, online supports trucking. It supports, interstate freight. It supports the rail. It supports.
And you have to create the products. You create the products that they ship.
Hold that point. We're coming back. See Payne Lucas, Milo, Pinckney, Jordan Goodman. We'll be back. Don't go away.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.RightSideWire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.RightSideWire.com.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933. Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
You know, there's quite a difference between an online technological economy and back during the days of an agricultural economy where the education and the sophistication was not as necessary, and it seems as though we had more to show for the entrepreneurial spirit in our economy. When you talk about the technological and the online economy, the kind of people that it takes to run these operations and to sustain it, a high degree educational level is much more required than, let's just say, 70 or 80 years ago when we were more in the industrial and agricultural economy, Jordan.
Absolutely. It's the knowledge economy, as people call it. That's right. And people are being left behind because they're not computer savvy and they're not engineers and they're not programmers and all the things that involve in running a company like a Facebook or an Amazon or a Microsoft or an Intel. There's a huge skills gap. In fact, I heard recently that we have a shortage in this country of 100,000 engineers. 100,000 engineers. We don't have them. We're not creating them because these companies are creating that many jobs, and we have to import them from China and India and Korea and other places because we just aren't making them fast enough. So while there's tremendous unemployment, there's also a tremendous shortage of people to fill these huge jobs that are needed out there.
And Milo, isn't that a problem that those jobs cannot be fulfilled when you think about all the institutions of higher learning, the best in the world, and the many different degrees that people can pursue, and yet
it's hard. It's hard getting an engineering degree or a computer science degree. People would much rather do poetry and humanities and political science or things.
No. What you're saying is that it's not hard, is that a lot of kids are choosing the easy path through 4 years of college.
That's correct.
But Milo, that has to change.
No, it has to change. But I hear this dialogue, and and it's interesting because my take on it is frequently different. Because I look down the actual delivery channels, and what we're talking about, it's interesting. Obama keeps talking about redistribution of wealth. Well, the educational gap in the technological areas of training is going to redistribute wealth just simply by default of educational background. But even more practical applications of it that we see is, we mentioned Amazon earlier. Amazon has huge distribution centers in 4 quadrants of the United States and international, and they're employing thousands of people in these facilities. Those are relatively unskilled workers who, by default of the few engineers and computer technicians who are developing the code for Amazon, are employed by default of that work effort. So I think that what we're going to see over the next 15, 20 years is a shifting of the new warehouse worker is yesterday's agricultural worker. But even the agricultural work that is being done today is tied to the technological revolution that we're experiencing.
Very much so. Yeah, if you're a car mechanic, you have to be a computer mechanic.
Absolutely.
Basically. If you're running a farm, you're running a computer on a combine now. It's all very technologically based today. And even Amazon, I agree with you, there's lots of warehouse workers who are doing the shipping, but they've got an awful lot of robots mushing things around there, too. It's a very highly automated system. They have people only when they absolutely need to.
You've got technicians servicing the robots. You've got engineers designing the robots. So the jobs are shifting around. I don't know that we're losing as many jobs as we believe that we are. But what I do believe is happening is that we are creating a more competitive environment for ourselves because now that piece of code can be written in China, in Russia, anywhere else on the planet, and frequently by somebody who has the same educational capabilities but is willing to work for 2 cents on the dollar.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday, Armstrong, the company I'm going to be working with probably that does kind of internet marketing, software, and so on. It's a virtual company, and they literally have programmers that work for them in India, Malaysia, China, the Ukraine, Belarus, all over the place. And they've probably never even met each other. And there's this whole thing called crowdsourcing now, where you go online and you put it out literally to the world, and you get hundreds of responses right away from people wanting to do whatever you want. And it's just amazing. That's the reality of the world today, is that people have the skills anywhere in the world to do them, in many cases by computer.
Not to change or deviate from this topic too much, but I had a question about how you all see this debt debacle and the fiscal cliff affecting our economy.
Big time.
What's that?
big time.
How do Milo? Or either of you? How do you guys see that truly affecting how businesses are making decisions in the coming year?
Well, let's assume for the moment we go over the fiscal cliff. Let's assume for the moment that there is not an agreement, which unfortunately I think is the most likely case right now. Most sides are really staking out their grounds and don't seem to be compromising much at all. So let's for the moment assume that the fiscal cliff happens, and on January 1st we have the $600 billion tax increase and $100 billion spending cut, the sequestration, happening all at once. At the same time that we're having to raise the national debt ceiling from 16 toward $4 trillion up, from there to some extent. The extension of unemployment benefits has to be extended. The tax holiday on Social Security, the alternative minimum tax has to be extended, and that's going to hit 32 million people. I mean, all kinds of dramatic things happen at once on January 1st. So let's assume.
Actually, in terms of sequestration. And actually, some of these things actually don't even start until March. But go ahead.
But I mean, the point is, the wheels will be put in motion as of January 1st.
Okay.
It doesn't all happen on January 1st, but at that point, people are going to get laid off. For example, I mean, if you're working for Lockheed Martin or something, or Raytheon, and sequestration goes into effect, they're going to start laying people off in January. I mean, it may not be fully implemented then, but it's going to start hitting right away. So here are some of the impacts, assuming that this in fact happens. The stock market goes down. It already is going down, but it's going to go down even more in anticipation of this, potentially a lot. Businesses are going to either certainly not hire or fire people in anticipation of a contraction of the economy. The economy, which is now growing at maybe 1.5% to 2% rate, will go into negative, probably maybe 2%, maybe more than that. The Congressional Budget Office is saying a recession of at least 2% contraction. Interest rates will fall further because there'll be such a rush into treasuries out of safety, kind of a fear situation. Safety, that's where people want to save money. So you're already seeing that. You've seen long-term treasury rates fall from about 1.8 down to about 1.5 since the election because of people running for safety. Consumers, I think, will pull back on their spending, and that will affect holiday spending as well. So consumer confidence will go down. I think it could hurt the housing market, which has had some very good positive movement here. Credit could tighten up, and that could slow down the housing market. When you go buy a house, you have to have consumer confidence, and if people lose confidence, they're not going to buy houses. And then around the world, I think the U.S. dollar could fall as people lose confidence in that. I mean, people around the world are looking at us, too, and say, can't you get your act together? I mean, they've got problems in Europe and other places, but it doesn't make us look very good. We've had a replay of this. We had this happen in August of 2011 when we had the debt ceiling debate, and you saw what happened. The markets fell, tremendous consternation, sales fell, businesses contracted. This could be a much, much bigger version of what happened back in August of 2011.
Milo, do you think that if there is a deal shortly after the new year, we'd be able to recover from what was just said?
No, I don't actually. I think the deal has to happen in anticipation of the deadline. I think any deal post the deadline is just like when you say any other deal that you have. After the deadline, it's a deadline, and that's why we have deadlines. On a less catastrophic note, I think one of the things that we're going to see is an 11th hour adjustment in position, because I think all of the parties involved in the decision making in Washington recognize that to permit us to go off the cliff would be nearly irrecoverable. And
I agree with you, but I'd like to hear from you what kind of compromise you think both sides could accept. I mean, both sides have guns held to their heads, basically. What kind of compromise do you think they will accept under the circumstances?
Well, it's interesting. I don't agree that they both have guns to their head. I think pre-election, Obama had a gun to his head. Post-election, he can come back and say, well, I've rethought this, and in the best interest of the country, I have to make an adjustment. And there'll be some short-term flack, and they'll call him, a waverer, and the bleeding heart liberals will scream and yell that they've been, abandoned. But I think a cooler, more rational head ultimately has to come. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, a liberal or a conservative, I think everybody would recognize that Obama is fundamentally an intelligent man. And a high school kid understands that we can't permit this to occur.
So you think, yesterday in the press conference, Obama said he's not going to relent on the Bush tax cuts being extended for everybody. He wants them to go up for sure for the over 250 crowd. Do you think he's going to relent on that?
I think I don't see logically how he can go to without relenting. I think it's an 11th hour to the wire negotiating tactic. It's brinkmanship, but I just don't see how you do it. And
I disagree. I disagree. I think he's not going to relent. He's never going to be up for election again, and he felt that he was pushed around too much last time in 2010 when he did give up, and this time he has nothing to lose. He's never going to be up for election
legacy.
again.
He cares about his legacy. I'm sorry, Jordan. He cares about his legacy.
He cares about his legacy, and
he does.
And he is, in many respects, I think one thing that we all can agree on is that he is clearly an ego-driven leader.
Egomaniacal-driven leader.
You have to be that way to be in the office of the president.
And you have to believe at this point, he wants to go down in history as not being the worst in history. You can't have a fundamental understanding of economics and believe that it makes sense to permit this country to go off the cliff.
Hold there, guys. Lucas, Goodman, Pinckney. We'll be back.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.RightSideWire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.RightSideWire.com.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
And welcome back to the Armstrong Williams Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to get too bogged down in the problems because I really want to celebrate the greatest economic engine the world has ever known. Do you think that the regulations and how so much has changed in terms of the income tax and how businesses have been gradually punished, not just starting in the last 7-8 years, but gradually since all these regulations started going in place? You look at things like Glass-Steagall and when Clinton removed Glass-Steagall and what happened. And what is it going to what is it going to take for us to get back to find those men and women that will continue the legacy of the Rothschilds, of the Carnegies, of the Mellons, of the J.P. Morgans? I mean, what is it going to take to find those people again? Do they exist? Are they so removed from it we'll never see it again, Milo?
No, I think they're all here. I don't think. Well, let me rephrase that. I think that the entrepreneurial spirit will always survive in America. It has changed. I don't think the Zuckermans of the world can be compared to the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, but they are clearly, dynamic entrepreneurs generating results. Guys like Elon Musk. This guy is single-handedly revolutionizing the auto industry. So I think the opportunities are there, and I think that those of us who seek opportunity will continue to reach out to take advantage of them. The challenges that I think face us are that we have to jump through so many legislative and regulatory hurdles that many of the incentives are diminished. So what ultimately will occur is a focus on more lofty projects, greater risk, in exchange for potentially greater reward. But I believe that they will continue to present themselves.
But you actually think, I mean, many people say, Jordan, that those people like the Fords and others are dying breed.
Well, they are. I mean, you don't get those kind of monopolists anymore. I mean, probably the closest we would have would be the two guys running Google, Page and Breen, and Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. I mean, he created something out of nothing. It was worth $100 billion at its peak. Didn't last that long, but he did create something in a few years that was grow really, really fast.
What was it in our history and going on during those times that created so many of them at one time that does not exist today?
Well, deregulatory environment, I think, and then you had an economy that was wide open. I mean, we needed oil, we needed railroads, we needed banking. All these things didn't exist, and you had guys coming in there like Carnegie and Rockefeller and so on who saw those opportunities and really went for it. In many cases, we're saturated today. We don't have those kind of wide open opportunities.
Also, you have to admit that the opportunities that Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Rothschild, Guggenheim, all these guys that we've talked about, what was also fundamentally different was these were, in many cases, were not ethical business people. These were robber barons.
Oh, wow.
These were guys that were sending, I forget the Pendleton security, the officers in armed, shooting at neighbors. I'm sorry?
What, Pinkertons? I mean,
Pinkertons.
Right? Thank you, the Pinkertons.
It's interesting, because you know what you just made me think about? I remember even during the days of the Holocaust and Hitler, when the United States government tried to prevent Shell Oil and some of these oil companies from providing oil and fuel to the Hitler regime, and they just totally ignored the government and went about their business anyhow and provided the fuel.
Henry Ford went over and consulted.
I know. That's what I was thinking about. I forgot about it. It's true.
Yeah. So these, the times were very different, and you could do that. Today that would be high treason.
High treason? You're being nice.
There's something good for regulation, I guess.
No, absolutely. There's look. Don't get me wrong. I will never be one to say that regulation is a evil incarnate. I believe that nor will I say that unions are evil incarnate. But I would also be the first to say that both regulatory oversight and unions, while they played a historic positive role, have reached a point where they are now causing damage to America.
There's a pendulum, and things got too loose in the early 1900s when you had the robber barons creating these monopolies and so on. And then you had a reversion to that in the Roosevelt years when unions rose to unionize all these places that had been. But it's because they exploited people too much, so they were responding to that. And then the unions have created a huge amount of power now, particularly in the public sector, more so than the private sector. And it's harder for companies to do that. So I think we have to have some slide back in the pendulum, back towards free enterprise and having fewer both government regulations and union control, particularly in the public sector. I mean, you see what's happening, for example, in California right now, okay? California just had this referendum where they allowed tax increases to go up, basically to pay for school teachers and at the education system. So unions win and the taxpayers lose. That's an example of something that just happened where the public sector has enormous influence and lobbying power to get the public to spend money on them, basically, is when it comes down. That's happening in other states, too, Illinois and other places.
And your thoughts about banking and regulation. I mean, look at what happened with the housing market. And
well, again, it's a pendulum. We were much too loose in the mid-2000s, and people were getting mortgages and loans that they shouldn't have gotten. And now I think we're much too tight.
So we swing within a 10-year period, you think?
Well, I think things are going to stay tight for a long time because the Dodd-Frank regulations, which are going to go into effect, now that Obama's reelected, they're going to stay that way, remain very, very tight and make banks want to be very, very risk-averse. So I think it's hard for people to get mortgages today who in the past would have gotten mortgages. A normal American family being able to put down 10% with a 700 credit score, all a good job and all that, it's really hard for them to get a mortgage today.
And you know something? Somebody with a 700 credit score and 10% to put down shouldn't get a mortgage.
Why?
Well, they're not getting them, so you're right. That's what's happening.
Why, Milo?
Because they don't have sufficient equity in the asset to overcome any fluctuations in the market. And a 10% value transition can occur in a minute. So
that's not the way the American
That's how we built our. That's how we built this country.
People used to put down 10% all the time.
Absolutely.
Now it's 20%.
No, but
people used to put down 3%.
Well, hang on, slow down, guys. Let's take it back to when we had a stable housing growth where we realized a 4% annual rate of growth in housing. In the 60s and 70s, you needed 30% to put down on a house, and that was true from the 40s right up through the late 70s, early 80s.
You had much lower interest rates in those days too. I mean, now we have them again. But when interest rates went way up in the 70s and 80s,
values kept pace with housing values did not exceed a rate of growth. Their rate of growth did not exceed the income rate of growth. So you can't have people buying homes when the house is appreciating at 20% a year and their income is appreciating at 6% a year. So that's what created the bubble in the first place.
That's right.
And now, we're returning to a similar posture. What we need to do is mandate simply to buy a house. You need 25% down.
But that limits the market to who can buy homes dramatically.
Yeah, it does. And you know something? I appreciate the Clinton concept that everybody should have a home, but everybody can't afford a home.
Not everybody, but a lot of people. I mean, we talk about who gets foreclosed upon, but lots and lots of people who are just describing 700 or even lower credit score, 10% down, did pay their mortgages on time, and were just fine over many, many years.
And you want to know something? If they had the 30 or 40 or 50% equity that they would have in their house after being in a house 10 years, had they put 30% down, they would be less likely to be in a foreclosure position.
I'm just saying lots of people did not get near foreclosure who were just doing fine, and you're saying they shouldn't even be able to get on the ladder in the first place.
Not until we've stabilized this country. Absolutely not.
But stabilizing the country, housing is a big part of our economy.
Absolutely.
And you're shutting out a lot of people who in the past would have been able to, because it's not only when people buy a home, but then they buy carpeting and furniture and TVs, and there's a multiplier effect when people buy homes. So you're slowing the economy down dramatically.
Yeah, you are, but you're stabilizing
people to get mortgages.
I would rather a slower, stable economy than an unstable, fast-moving one.
Well, we disagree. I think you want to stimulate the economy by allowing people. I agree we were too loose in the mid-2000s, totally. People were getting mortgages who should not have. But I think that we swung from that being much too loose to, I think, much too tight. I think we should come back towards the middle and allow people to get mortgages in a way that would be helpful to them. I'll just give a resource, too, that can help people in that area. There's a website, youcanrefi.com, youcanrefi.com, that can help people get mortgages today who have decent credit. And these are the lowest mortgage rates we've ever seen in history, 3.3% on 30-year mortgages, something like that.
Absolutely. But,
people should be able to take advantage of those. A lot of people are not able to because their credit scores aren't high enough and they don't have enough equity in their home.
Yesterday I had a conversation with a tenant in a property that I own in Florida. And, he was asking to extend his tenancy in my property through May because he's looking for a home to purchase down in Florida, and he's looking at foreclosures and short sales, and he, what he said to me was, I really don't want to. My house down there is 3,000 square feet, and it has a pool and a hot tub, and he's renting it. And he said, I really want something like this, but I can't find anything like this in my budget. I said, well, what are you looking for? He says, well, I'm really looking to spend only about $125,000 because I'm only making $16,000 a year.
What?
You heard me. I'm only making $16,000 a year. And with my from my job and my Social Security gives me about another $12,000 a year. So between the two, but I really don't want to be in something that small.
You should not be able to buy a house as big as the one he's renting.
My point precisely. So
I agree.
Do we agree to slow the economy so that people like that don't go out and buy 3,000 square foot houses for $500,000? Or do we say, well, we don't want to design them because they might buy some carpet?
Pinckney, Goodman, Lucas, just hold, we're coming back.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Whether it's their impact on prison guards, law enforcement officials, business executives, employees, or marriage and relationships, Lorette is dedicated to changing the individual and institutions around the globe. Lorette's diverse network and training courses can help provide you with the tools you need to both wisely and confidently lead, manage, and supervise yourself as well as others. Lorette Business Network, a proven system for achieving success in your business and life. Please visit their website and begin this life-lasting journey with Lorette today, www.lorette.org.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Milo, I'm baffled. How is this tenant able to afford to pay you now?
Well, you know something? Because the market is so soft, I had the house sitting there empty for 2 years. And I said, let me put some. He's a grandfather. He's a stand-up guy. His rent check comes in time, and I'm renting the house. For $1,500 a month.
That's what the banks should do. Instead of foreclosing these people, if they're paying something, it's better than getting nothing at all and putting it underwater. That's the same philosophy these banks should use.
Exactly. Because it's prudent and it's responsible.
Part of the Dodd-Frank regulation, though, makes the banks have to foreclose. They don't want them to have, underwater mortgages like that. So the regulators are forcing people to some extent to get thrown out of their homes.
But you know what's happening? They're not even foreclosing. They're starting the foreclosure process. They're throwing the homeowner out of the home. Right. And then they're not completing the foreclosure process because if they did, they would assume responsibility for the taxes and the maintenance and associated community costs.
But they've done that a lot. I mean, there's huge amounts of foreclosures on the books of the banks where there's nobody in the house.
I got to tell you, there's an even larger amount that they haven't completed the foreclosure process on. And so not only are they throwing these people out of their homes, they are undermining the people in the communities that are taking care of their homes and paying their mortgages, because they're devaluating their assets, because these properties are sitting abandoned and breaking down. You know,
that's right.
The whole thing
undermines the entire real estate market when you have foreclosures in your market.
Exactly. So you know, I'm sorry, I'm a little passionate about this because I recognize that, you know, I'm from the old school. I come from a half West Indian and half Southern black background, and I was told, you know, you don't go out and buy a luxury car until you have the equivalent amount of that car working for you as investment income, so that your investment income pays for it. And you don't go out and buy a house that's bigger than you can heat.
You're downright un-American.
Apparently,
that's not the way America works. America buys things they can't afford.
You know, and it's funny. You know, we are not the. You know, it's funny. I get into it with my wife because, you know, every time Obama talks about the fat cats, and she says, "Oh yeah, you know, we should tax those people." I tell her, "Go look in the mirror," because that's who he's talking about. But you know, the bigger problem is, even those of us who have enjoyed some degree of privilege, I am not flying my corporate aircraft right now. I have to go to a board meeting in New York. I have on Delta because I can't responsibly justify the extra cost, because the revenue to support it isn't there the way it was when I first got it. So I only fly it when I am moving multiple employees or when a client is paying for it. And the rest of the time, I get on Delta and I fly coach. And that is responsible. And all that is necessary now is for business people to be responsible, and for politicians to be responsible, and for consumers to be responsible to get us out of the mess that we're in.
Well, businesses have been pretty responsible. I mean, they've been very tight, and they're cutting back. They're building up a lot of cash, and you know, they've been making themselves into financial fortresses. Businesses, consumers are doing somewhat better, although they're starting to get into more credit card debt again. But businesses and consumers have been doing relatively well. The real spendthrift is the government. Okay.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Was, you know, how long before some of these corporations let up off of the purse strings? I mean, they've made a ton of money here in this last cycle.
Well, with a fiscal cliff, they're going to get tighter, not looser.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wouldn't expect at any time. If they had some certainty about what the rules are going to be going forward, and there were incentives, then yes. I think even yesterday Bernanke said that the companies have something over $1 trillion worth of cash on the balance sheets that's, you know, waiting for some kind of certainty to invest, and they're just not going to do it under the current circumstances. So they're going to get tighter, not looser, which means laying off employees.
Have you guys been paying attention to what's going on with Hostess bakeries?
Yeah, they're about to shut down.
You know, it's an interesting thing. I thought, oh, okay, well, you know, people are eating better, and it has nothing to do with that. The union at Hostess, the CEO of Hostess, went to the union and said, listen, the numbers are contracting. We need a across-the-board 8% wage cut. And not only did he request an 8% wage cut, he said that it was across-the-board all employees, including executive staff.
Right.
And the union said, no, we're going out on strike. So he said, you know what, fine. Thursday, show up to work at 5 o'clock, open the doors. If you don't open the doors at 5 o'clock, I'll liquidate the company Friday morning.
You're kidding.
No, that's what he did.
That's right.
And I applaud him. I absolutely applaud him. Yeah. Because that's what's it's going to take to turn America around.
This has happened in other industries, too. This has happened in the steel business. It happened in all kinds of other businesses where the unions hung on to the end until they shut down their industries, basically.
And I applaud him for having the cojones to make the hard decision. It's about time, because if we did this, you know, it's one thing if he says, I want you guys to take an 8%. But when he says, we're going to take an 8% wage cut across the board, all employees of the company, from the janitor to the CEO, to save the company, and the idiot union says no, close the doors.
So that can happen. So we don't have Hostess Twinkies anymore. But how is this going to happen?
Will they come back to their senses, Milo?
I don't know. I sure hope so. Because that's 18,000 employees soon to be out of work. And I'll tell you something else, Armstrong. I'd take it one step further. If I were in his shoes, I would say, anybody who shows up to work on Friday, you don't have a job. I'll go out and get all new employees. Because he offered them the opportunity to save that company.
Well, this is kind of what Reagan did with the air traffic controllers, right?
Exactly what Reagan did with the air traffic controllers. But you know something? If Reagan were running for president today, he couldn't get elected.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No, Armstrong, I'll tell you, I can defend that argument. I know we got to go to commercial, but I can defend that argument.
Defend it.
Reagan ran on a platform of personal accountability, national loyalty, commitment to excellence, and self-reliance. Those were the tenets of the Reagan years. The people that re-elected Obama was, it's interesting. Romney didn't lose the election because of a poor message. Romney lost the election because he didn't have enough votes. Reagan wouldn't get the number of votes he needed either. And the reason Obama had the votes was the people who were supporting Obama were the people who want more free stuff. You've got a situation where you have one elected official saying, I want you to be accountable, I want you to pay your share, I want you to take responsibility to turn the situation around, and another guy who's saying, I'm going to make sure you continue to get all the free goodies you get, you're not going to have to wait, I'm going to take care of you. Who are they going to vote for? People don't vote right and wrong, people vote their wallet.
Yeah, except when the gravy train stops, that doesn't work, like in Greece now.
The people who voted for Obama aren't thinking about when the train stops. They're enjoying the ride right now because they're in the minute.
That's right.
Well, I have to disagree with you, but there's probably, and I think a lot of Obama supporters would tell you that free stuff is not necessarily why they voted for Barack Obama. So.
Well, I'm not going to say they didn't vote for him because of free stuff. But I tell you one thing: if 52% of the population, if almost 40% of the population is receiving, what do you call those funny-looking checks that they give you credit cards for?
Oh, vouchers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you think that the only way you can survive is by the government's assistance, and I won't say they don't have another job, but I think for some of them the government is their cushion. I don't think they want to roll back government out of their lives. I mean, because listen, I'm surprised that Obama won again. I will just tell you, to me, it's baffling. But
I predicted it.
Yes, you did. I don't know if people really understand the economy and what's really going on. And, that's why I'm going to come back for a couple of more segments, because you know what? I don't think people really understand. I don't know if we convey our message in the right way where people really understand. Because I've got to tell you something. Obama talking about rolling back and cutting back on the rich. It's not the rich that's not going to suffer from his policy. It's those who have the least, Jordan.
Correct. You want the rich to get richer because they do bring up other people. They spend money on things that help you. I mean, I'll just give you a classic example. In the past, they cut down on building yachts. Remember that whole thing? Mm-hmm. Well, the rich didn't get hurt. They just kept their existing yachts. But who got hurt are the people building the yachts. Okay, so
you remember
that's
the
a classic example. You try to hit the rich, and they do fine, but the people serving the rich get always hurt by these kind of things.
We killed the aerospace industry, the domestic aerospace industry in the 80s with product liability insurance. It absolutely wiped out. In 1981, there was no less than 37 U.S. aircraft manufacturers. By 1995, there was 14.
Yeah.
And we killed it. And who was hurt? It wasn't the guys buying and flying the airplanes. It was the guys building the airplanes and the guys building the parts to make the airplanes and the guys working in the smelters making the metal to build the airplanes.
It sounds good to tax the rich, but they find ways around it, and the little guy gets hurt. That's the reality of it.
It only sounds good to people who aren't thinking.
Well, Milo, you certainly have a way with words. I'm thinking about during the Bill Clinton years, how this country did so well after raising taxes.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Do you know one of the single greatest contributing factors?
We're going to come back to the issue of raising taxes. We're coming up We're going to come back to this. It's too important. This is a very important show. And so what we're going to do, we're going to come back. I want to just say goodbye for this aspect of the show. Jordan Goodman, C. Payne Lucas, Milo, Pinckney. We're going to wrap this up, but there will be part 2. So check your local listening for part 2. I'm Armstrong Williams.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org. Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
The sweet potato pie, even the keenest taste buds will tell you the best food on the planet, large enough to serve you and small enough to know you. So get to Henry's at 5431 Indian Head Highway, Oxon Hill, Maryland, or give us a call at 301-749-6856.